Are you tired of stick people drawings stinking up your exercise programs? Do you wish you had an exercise prescription software that had hundreds of pictures, videos, fully customizable text, inbuilt virtual consultation software, and you could send it by email or WhatsApp? If that software existed, I bet you would want a 3-month free trial, wouldn't you? Just go to rehabmypatient.com/physiomatters now.
Hello and welcome to YouMatter. Hello and welcome to this next episode of YouMatter, where I'm talking to Adam Su, a physiotherapist with his own clinic called Down to You, based in Sheffield. A clinic from which he runs a program called Work and Pain Solutions. And we're going to talk in detail about this program during the podcast episode. But Adam also shares a lot about his personal history as a young man in physiotherapy and the highs and lows of that journey, which I think a lot of people will probably understand and resonate with. And some of you will be quite surprised by. So I think his journey into how he came to offer that program is as interesting as the discussion about the program itself. Adam is somebody who I hope will become much more well known in our profession. I think what he's doing aligns really well with how a lot of us are thinking our profession should go. So have a listen, see what you think. As ever, let me know what chimes with you, what you find interesting, what you'd like to take away from what you hear. And I will be back at the end to talk about that a little bit more. So, hello and welcome to this next episode of YouMatter podcast, where my guest today is physiotherapist Adam Su. Hello, Adam. Thanks ever so much for coming on the podcast.
Hello, Joe. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So, Adam runs his own company. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching the video, you'll see both on Adam's top and behind him, he's got D2U, and his company is called Down to You, which when you hear about the way Adam works, I think you'll realize that name is perfect and speaks volumes about Adam's approach. The reason I've invited Adam on is because I came across Adam on LinkedIn when he shared a video of a program he runs. And this program is called Work and Pain Solutions. I'm going to try and share the video in the show notes because it really, for me, illustrated very clearly what Adam's about and what he's trying to do. We'll talk about that program more when we get into the episode. But what I want to do first is hand over to you, Adam, and just ask if you would go back over your career history for us, just so that we can see what led you to this really interesting point that you're at now. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And everybody has their own journey, and I'm really excited to share my own. Yeah, so I'm first generation born Chinese in the UK. My mum and dad came from Hong Kong and China. So not from an academic background at all, not really much support from them in terms of like where to go, in terms of like life choices and stuff like that. So at 17 years old, when you're going through school, they go, oh, decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. I had a bit of pain in my back at that time, actually. That's what started this whole journey, I suppose, when I think back and reflect on my left side. And I spoke about this on another podcast where, yeah, I was just waking up pretty regularly with pain. My mum actually did take me to a private physiotherapist, gave me some really basic stretches, which were helpful. And obviously, I've advanced on those moments since on self-exploration. So from 17, decided to do physiotherapy and applied for the 5 university courses on UCAS and did it. And I got interviews and I got probably about 3 or 4 interviews. And every interview, obviously, I actually had feedback of saying I wasn't empathetic enough because my work experience on my CV showed no caring experience. So going back to my background, I was working in a takeaway with my parents and from a very young age, actually, which is probably not allowed nowadays. So like from like 12 years old, I was working in a takeaway. Even at university on the weekends, I would come back and work with them. So that really affected my social sort of connections and social belonging, really, which again might influence the way I approach things now. So from there, obviously, it got rejected, and again, no advice from my parents or teachers about I think it's called clearing. So, you know, if you've got the grades, and which I did get, you could bring up the university, see if there's anybody else that didn't obviously make the cut and get on the course. But I didn't know about that, and I took a undergraduate in sports science and physiology, and that was a 3-year degree at Leeds. Really enjoyed the course, really difficult. And I did put a lot of ownership on myself in terms of being very driven to be academic or try to be academic, but I really struggle with words. I'm potentially dyslexic, but I've not gone through the diagnosis or anything like that. I just obviously live with it and manage it. So for me, I read sentences many times before I really understand the context of what it's saying.
Yeah.
And then from there, through the degree, I had a little bit of a panic attack actually. I'd broken down, and I knew that I put a lot of pressure on myself. I needed a 2-1 to be able to get into the master's accelerated physiotherapy degree, which I managed to get onto. And again, that personal story has really helped me develop the way I am in terms of how I empathize with clients. And again, through having those 3 rejections through interviews in that first thing, saying that I'm not empathetic enough, really probably still sort of drives me a little bit in terms of my clinical practice. Got into the masters, and obviously through every physio degree, we have clinical placements, and yeah, time to explore in terms of what you like and see what you want to specialize in. And again, just from not being very again, it's a really weird situation in terms of myself, and I'm probably still figuring it out in terms of social belonging in the UK. And going into a Western culture NHS, I did find it very difficult, and it didn't help when my first placement. I had my friend who is in Zimbabwe, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying. I won't say his name, but he was a very a confident American guy, and he was outspoken. And I heard one of your recent podcasts, and he had a similar experience where he was very outspoken, very confident, and he got struck off that first placement. And that really, in fact, impacted ours. We were 4 guys out of 12 cohort physios, and it really impacted well, mine and his confidence for sure. We were the two sort of, I guess, minor ethnicities, and yeah, so that made me really work in the area of caution when I was in the NHS. Didn't want to take a step wrong. Sort of like imposter syndrome, coming from like a Chinese background, takeaway. Now I'm in hospital trying to help somebody. Like that's just that was a huge shock. And I remember every day going to like a placement, and I would listen to songs which were like quite emotional slash inspirational, and I would actually sometimes have tears driving into the placement because I was wondering like how am I going to be spoken to today, how I'm going to be treated, and so forth. So from that, from that experience, I did manage to pass, and one of my MSK placements, I didn't do very well, and then I had another opportunity to do another MSK course, and I was able to succeed and do really well with it, and that really gave me that confidence to go into MSK and private world after that, because I did make that conscious decision not to probably participate on an NHS. I graduated in 2012, and that's where there was a bit of a dip and recession or job shortage for physios in the NHS there. So we found it really difficult to get a job in the NHS anyway. But again, I feel like things happen for a reason. And then from there, I went into occupational health, and that really opened my eyes in terms of developing my clinical practice. Um, it was an organization that supplied, interventions and occupational health for long-term sickness, so people that have been off work for a long period of time. And that's where I was first introduced to functional restoration programs or principles. And it was more about what can somebody do instead of what's the pain doing. So, they taught us about um, how do we get somebody better functionally, and as a byproduct, their pain might reduce, or actually getting back to an active life, and their pain reduce as a byproduct. So that really opened my eyes. And I guess I also want to talk about manifestation. When I was on my journey to physiotherapy, I did want to work for the police and be the lead physio there. And through the occupational health, they had the police as a contract, and I became the lead physio there. And then within 2 years, I established a really good relationship with them, and the manager there really enjoyed the way I worked and talked to the officers because they are a bit of a different kind of bunch. And I was in the police then for 9 years altogether, and was really able to hone in my interpersonal skills, my clinical skills in terms of having that much time. So I had like an hour or so with clients to talk about the mental, the social, the emotional, as well as the physical contributions to why somebody was off work for a long period of time. And so after 3, 4 years of doing that on a one-to-one in a clinic base, I started to recognize patterns and trends of like what people were suffering with. And now I call it in this whole bucket of tension, basically. And so
Tension, did you say?
tension, yes.
Yeah.
So like what is adding to that tension? What's contributing to them having that persistent pain? And we talk about the biopsychosocial approach. So from doing that and understanding that there are specific things that add into a police officer's life or police staff's life, I started to develop like a well-being talk. So I was approached by obviously all corporate organizations love the health and well-being arm. And so I jumped on that and said that, I could present something in terms of physical interventions. And I started to see like how the corporate world sometimes reacted is like last minute, they've got a bit of underspend. Let's go and just pay for some interventions and off the shelf stuff, which wasn't tailored to police. And so when I did the talks, they're in the mandatory CPD. Everybody's crossing their arms like, what's this guy going to teach me about what? What does he know about police? And obviously me just saying like, I work with you guys on the ground, and this is data that I've developed through working with you guys. And having the theory side and trying to encourage behavior change was really, really hard. But, I had to do the practical side, which they loved, and feeling the benefits from the interventions I give now. And all of them always gone from arms crossed and then laughing and really enjoying the course. And then, getting lovely feedback from there. And then obviously they did a review through the HR saying what's the referrals looking like for occupational health. And again, at the beginning of that career, I set out a personal goal, I suppose, to make my job redundant. And this is where the down to you physiotherapy and health and well-beings come from, is that if I can teach the officer not to come back to me and that they can deal with flare-ups, conflict, confrontations, and they don't need to come see me, then that's what I would like to do. So through the well-being sessions, after 3, 4 years of delivering it through the whole district, they found that the referral rates to the occupational health for musculoskeletal issues were very low. And then after that report, they found out they needed 9 counsellors and half a physio for the whole force. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And again, a bit short-sighted from them. They said, we don't want you to do the well-being stuff anymore. We just want you to be a physio and do the one-to-one. And
Be the half physio.
yes, exactly. Or just be the traditional physio that, that in the textbook, and that's what they wanted. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's time for me to grow and carry on. Then I had a choice between going into a Nuffield and doing MSK outpatient service, or into FCP. And I thought, in terms of my skill set, I think the FCP would be a better role for me to learn about outside the box. So what else can influence pain, and what else can influence people's symptoms? And it was such a good learning curve. And as physio is alone working, and in that police role, I was, alone working there. And this FCP role, there was 200 physios in the network, really, really a huge network of physios. I thought, great, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to be able to bounce off people's knowledge and feel part of something once, social belonging, going back to that situation. And I did. They had a football team and we played five-a-side. I thought, this is it. I found the career for me now for long term. But during that time, obviously, it was like COVID time. So, a lot of it was remote, and that's where we were turning to. But for me, I didn't have enough time to help clients in my way to make me feel fulfilled. So, for example, you have clients and you refer on, that they need some more input from someone else or more investigations. But what I found myself doing was looking for community services. So if I had an elderly gentleman, a female, or whatever, and I think, right, okay, this does he need surgery? Would further injections help his pain? And surgery would not always be something that would be warranted for somebody of this age. And I thought movement, social connection is going to be such a better outcome than going for some more medical support.
Mm.
So I would always look for like local classes, chair aerobics, community centers that do like walking groups, coffee and chat, whatever it is. And I found myself referring to those services more than the traditional, unless obviously there's some sinister stuff potentially that we have to refer on. And then through there, I found approximately 70% of the clients were chronic pain. So, in the definition of chronic pain is people having pain for 3 months or more, and it's starting to affect their life. And 70% of clients will come in, and I just saw this conveyor belt situation in the GPs where they'll come into the GP, medication, and then off they go, and they'll be all right for a bit. They'll have a flare up, and they'll come back again looking for some more answers, and it's again the medical route. So I started to get into this frustrated situation, and I thought I've always had this niggle to start my own thing. Well, I always had my own thing on the side, to be honest, a bit of a side hustle. But I thought I'm going to put some more time and dedication into what I want to do. So I started knocking on some doors and just saying like, look, this is my background. I've helped people with long-term sickness go back into work. And then I approached the council, and the program manager there said, look, we are open to innovative services. And what are you going to offer? They said there's going to be some opportunities in the future. Put your bid in. So I wrote a bid and told them what I could offer. And the contract manager said that was the best tender they've ever heard. Like,
Really?
yes. For the first
Amazing.
time, I was like, do you write tenders all the time? I was like, no, I don't. That was my first one. He said, I loved it. And it's really, really effective and beneficial. And that was in 2020, 21, I would say, at the end of. I got the contract in 2022, and because I had secured some sort of financial sort of income, I was able to take that leap of faith and leave the employed world. At that time, I had a what did I have? I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So a big financial uh, jump from having security to then obviously to the unknown.
Yeah.
And then from there, and I've grown the organization, and I've tried to stay in my niche of working with the unemployed and economically inactive who have physical health as a pain barrier or health barrier to get back into the economic market.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just grown from strength to strength. And I've always there's sometimes some downtime, and obviously with chronic pain patients, they can be very complex and very frustrating for a clinician sometimes, and not making that behavioral change, even though presented with all the information and the time and space
Mm-hmm.
to think out loud. And I've always tried to keep in my lane in terms of like this is where I want to focus on, rather than dabbing back into the occupational health or the corporate organizations, even though that's probably where most of the financial um, security may come from.
Mm.
And that's led to the growth of the work in pain solutions. And the reason why I call it that is because the pain program in the world at the minute, NHS, people go there. And once people go, oh, we want to pain program it down to you, they go, well, what's the difference to the pain program in the NHS and the pain program in down to you? I know. And since COVID, from what I hear from my clients is that the pain program is about how do we manage your pain? So using medication and the medical route, as we talked about before. Whereas mine is more conservative, uh, focusing on function and cans, changing the mindset, the coaching aspect, which you are heavily involved with, and getting to know the person and then taking them through this journey. And that's where I get most of my fulfillment now. So yeah, it's just following my passion, and that's what's led us to today. And I know that's a really long-winded journey of my career. I feel like that was all kind of relevant to shaping my drive and my why, I suppose.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just let you speak because it was 100% relevant, and what you've just said then shaping your why. Um, I hadn't heard the early story before of the social belonging side of it, and that story about in your early career, and hearing that makes so much sense as to why you're so why you're so drawn to what you do now, but also why you're so good at it. Um, just that point actually about in that placement where the other guy was struck off and the other young male physios made you feel really nervous. You mentioned it's probably Tom Jacobs you were referencing who had a similar experience, and there's another um, podcast episode with Alistair Beverley who shares the same story again. All three of you come across now as very sort of measured, calm. All three of you are actually quite softly spoken men who've all had this early experience of being told you're, I don't know, too much or not empathic. It's kind of mind-boggling and interesting that it's happened to so many of you. It's definitely something for another episode, but yeah, it's kind of shocking me that that's coming through as the same story with this similar demographic actually so many times. I don't know if you want to say any more about it, but for me, I'm sort of mentally logging that as something to, perhaps investigate a little bit more.
Yeah, and again, it's really hard to not come across like, attacking anybody or
Mm,
and stuff like that. But from our perspective, it was like obviously the profession is still quite female dominated,
yeah.
and I feel like when we were, mentored by those female educators, it can be quite hard in terms of the power dynamics. That's just through evolution, probably, and putting us in our place. Or we as men did not like that authoritative um, structure, I suppose, from a female potentially. So it could be our own
Mm,
responsibility, but the nature of the beast too. But I always like to self-reflect on how that's developed me as a clinician, how that made me grow rather than seeing it as a negative experience. And that's what's happened to my friend. And I'm now 13 years post-grad clinical experience, my friend, and we all did at that 10-year mark and 9-year, 10-year mark, we all had this
mm,
conversation going, is this it now for the rest of our lives? And most of us I did hit our highest point in our career in terms of like uh promotions and so forth. So he got to a band 8A and he was like, is this it? And obviously he was down south. And then he had a young family, so he decided to, actually leave the profession for now and
oh, did
become a
he?
private teacher. And then he reflected at one point where he was going through his teaching training that a teacher was watching him and he felt really intimidated again and he had to do some self-reflection and we still have really deep conversations about this and I love that about him and we have formed this kind of brotherhood I suppose through this kind of adversity
Mm,
to go through these kind of imposter syndrome slash just not feeling worthy.
yeah.
Um, and so again, I don't know whether that's me proving to myself by becoming good at my business and being good with clients and having good outcomes.
Well, I mean, certainly with the three of you that I've met, and Tom and Alistair I've got to know quite well, and starting to get to know you. Another common thread with all of you is your absolute dedication to the area that you've chosen to work in and a determination to make sure that it works for the people that you're delivering to. I mean, your program, especially in that regard. Let's make sure we do talk about your program because I really want people to understand what it is you've designed. It's a 6-week program, isn't it, Adam? And you work with a health coach as well. Just talk us a little bit through what a client would go through or participant would go through on your program.
So the typical participant journey is like they've developed a pain through an injury at work potentially or injury outside of work, and then they've gone through the obviously the medical route and sought out advice and treatment a decent treatment and advice in terms of the pathways that's offered through the NHS, through the medical model. So, medication initially, rest, go for a physio and get rehab, and a bit of strength and conditioning. And then when it becomes chronic, so from 3 months onwards, usually the pattern is, right, we need to give some psychological support. So then they might go to IAPT, which is, improving access to psychological therapies. When they might do some talking therapy and talking about how maybe the nervous system is impacting the pain, or the hypersensitive of the nervous system is continuing their persistent pain. And then maybe gone to a pain program, and then given injections, talked about pacing, talked about nervous system. And a lot of them that come to see me, obviously the ones that have failed, that have failed in terms of getting good outcomes,
Right.
usually say that the pain is in their brain. Somebody said to them, the pain is in the brain, I'm making up the pain. And it's obviously not the message that the clinician is saying, but that's what they've taken on. And that's really important, their interpretation of the messaging. And a lot of this, the messaging that they always come to me about is a nocebo effect. So, like, with the best intent, rest, don't lift, change your job, all that kind of advice through the medical professionals, because that's going to help you back, then lead to them having limiting beliefs about the back. They cannot bend, they cannot lift. And through that fear of movement and the development of postural guarding, rigidness, that's creating to that bucket of tension I mentioned about before, from a physical point of view and a psychological point of view. So what I've recognized is that through their treatment, through the previous treatment, they would always be targeted for one thing. So from a physical point of view or from a psychological point of view. And nobody really combine or blend the two together. And so that's what Down to You Work and Pain Solution is about. And we use work as a health outcome.
Okay.
Whereas in the NHS, we may not use that as an outcome, because that could be the employability services or the government's agenda. That's
So when
what
you say use it as an outcome, do you mean the fact that they are working or not working, or the amount they're able to work?
Yeah, if they're work ready as well. So like, I feel confident to return to work now. So,
Okay.
we can use that. And these guys have been off work for sometimes 20 years, 30 years. For them to magically go back to work after 6 weeks, that's going to be a huge miracle. And I'm not saying it's not happened, it has happened. But, just having that confidence to return to work and having that mindset change to say that actually I could probably do some part-time work or even some voluntary work now, is a huge outcome for us. And again, going back to my experience in the GP, sending the elderly to the community centres and just making that behaviour change and showing up and doing one class a week is like music to my ears, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that from a coaching aspect as well, from your world, is how do we make these guys know the theory, but then put it into practice in their lives. And so again, through my own personal experience of having chronic pain in my back, it's never stopped me from being active, playing football. And last year I got to a nice level of CrossFit, managed to get to a really high license event in the UK, and we placed 9th as a team, which was brilliant. And that's what I want to show my clients too, is that yes, you have pain, but does that mean stop? Does that mean you have to protect? Does that mean you're going to damage yourself by doing that? So once they've been referred to me through a work coach or through the NHS or whoever, which organization that they're dealing with, I will take them through a one-to-one, and it's quite an intensive hour and a half. We take a half an hour initial triage where we take down some health information. And in that hour and a half, we go through the health history, go through obviously the basic physiotherapy assessment and treatment, see what their range of motion's like, and then do treatment. And the treatment will involve a lot of self-efficacy, so self-empowerment. Like, this is what I'm doing to you. How do you replicate that treatment to yourself? And that is the most important thing about this, is the locus of control. And there's lots of research out there and a lot of surgeons out there now as well, speaking about this locus of control. And when somebody has a flare up, do they have control to bring it down? And before, their strategies was rest, heat, medication, going to see somebody for some self-relief if they could afford it, But all that is passive treatment.
Mm.
So what is the active stuff we're doing? All right. And patients will feel the pain spots and hopefully it will melt away. Once we've done the release, and that is encouraged for them to do for the rest of their lives, once they've done the release, they then go through a very hard physical conditioning. So as you've seen through the videos, the one that you're probably referring to doesn't necessarily show the strength that people go through. But obviously on my Instagram and stuff, you'll see a lot of the stuff we do. So
Just
we go
describe the
heavy
venue,
deadlift.
Adam, for people that haven't seen that.
Yes.
So this all takes place in a gym, doesn't it?
It takes place in a CrossFit gym. So that's my
CrossFit gym.
passion. And again, I love to talk to you about environment and how that keeps my motivation and my drive is about where you surround yourself, who you surround yourself with too.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's based in a CrossFit gym, very functional gym. You know, it's not too scary. It's just open
Yeah.
space, and we do functional movements. And after, playing with it, we have developed, a little program, a structured program. Like 1 week we'll do deadlift, heavy deadlifts. We'll do squats. We'll do shoulder and chest press. So it doesn't matter what area of your body area is of pain. We will target that through the strength issue. And so yeah, so then when we don't set any glass ceilings, we just go, let's go and do this deadlift. We're going to find your 1 rep max and let's see where you're at. And they do it and they do it. And then they go, and I say at the end, I say, how much do you think you lifted? And they'll be like 20, 30 kilos. And then they've done 100, 110 kilos. And they go, wow, I didn't think I had that strength in me. And giving them more capacity, then allows them to have that confidence when work legally, you're only meant to lift 25 kilograms at work. If they've done 100 kilos with me or 80 kilos, let's say, and I say, let's at work, you've got 25 kilos to lift. What is
Mm.
their confidence going to be like? It's going to be through the roof. So yeah, I've just basically joined the dots and just done a bit of hand holding. I understand about coaching that people need to get the answers within themselves. But through the police experience as well, some people are just so institutionalized, they just need that instruction and guidance.
Mm.
And through doing it, they gain that real life experience and the difference and the wisdom between knowing and actually doing.
Yes, and it sounds like you're adopting that side of coaching, which is the sort of the really supportive mirror that believes in their potential, to have someone. It's hard to maintain that belief, isn't it? You can instill it in someone and send them away, and there will be a point where that belief wavers. And I think to have, that repeated contact, and you've called it hand holding, in those early stages, just have someone alongside who always believes in you and will keep reinforcing that message. That sounds to me like a huge part of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's true. And like I said before, like with social belonging and chronic pain, it's coincided with social isolation, anxiety, depression,
Yeah,
reduced self-efficacy and belief and esteem. So having somebody just say to you, it's going to be okay,
yeah,
is where I'm working at the moment for sure.
yeah,
And even
yeah,
myself, I went through some business mentoring yesterday and I showed them my accounts and he was like, wow, you're okay. You don't need me. You're
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
And I'm like, no, I need somebody. Please help me. But actually, instilling that self-belief at every level is super important. And
yeah.
these guys that are the lowest of the low, that little bit of belief just helps them break out of that pit and that hole that they're in.
You're
And
right.
it's
Those
so,
words, you're
mm,
okay. And I totally
mm,
identify with the financial one. I've got an IFA that's known me since I was 19, and he knows that the best thing he can say to me is, Joe, it's not as bad as you think. It's fine. But yeah, you're okay is such a strong message. And we think people are okay, don't we? And it doesn't often take much to scratch the surface and realize that everybody in whatever sphere they're working in, even the most supremely confident looking people, still need a version of you're okay at some point. So, Adam, if people are listening to this, and well, I hope people are listening to this and realizing that um, this is such a modern way of working. This ticks every single box of the way we are being told healthcare should go, even by politicians. Some weird alignment for once about what we think should be happening and what they're saying. And I say that pointedly. But, it fits with person-centered care. It fits with preventative care, very specific lifestyle, functional exercise. I love your social belonging element. If people are listening thinking, gosh, that's how I want to be working, let's focus on your tender. So you said you were given the feedback that was the best tender that had ever been put to the council. What do you think it was about that tender that was so good? Or did you get any feedback about why it was so good?
Again, going back to my previous life experience, in my master's degree, again, with the reason why I brought up my dyslexia is that when I was given a task or coursework, I would start from day one. And a lot of my clients would do it last minute and be in the library and doing the Red Bull and doing the 40-hour stints and stuff. But I would prepare from very early on. I would read lots of research papers and I would read it over and over and over again. And I'll put it into a file. And then I think that's relevant, that's relevant, that's relevant. And then through doing that repetitively, I actually got caught up on plagiarism. And so the head of the faculty called me in and said, "Look, this is really, really bad, blah, 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 blah. And you're not going to be able to pass the course." I broke down again. Broke down again, had a panic attack. Brought my very close friend in with me on the chat, and he said, "Look, you can submit again, but your maximum score is going to be the pass rate." Right, did it. Hugely affected my confidence. The one thing that she said to me, and it still sticks with me now, is that if you being academically smart or being good on paper doesn't mean you're going to be a good practitioner. So that really stuck with me, and that's why my last placement, where I did do really well, really helped me grow my confidence to go, okay, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so I took on a recent module specializing in chronic pain, and I got a distinction on it. And that was a huge, big confidence boost again with what I'm doing and putting my mindset of how to make this new wave of physiotherapy, new wave of treating people in on the ground. How does it work? And from having that passion, having that understanding, using those outcome measures, using my knowledge and how to write a thesis and dissertation, I just applied that to the tendering process. And that was it, and then with the research backed, this research says this research says this, put it onto the paper, and they went, yeah, it all makes sense. So yeah, that's where it came from. So again, long-winded answer, just going through, adversity in terms of my writing skills to then a decent thing, and then to just put it into practice, put it on paper and see what happens. And even now when I'm writing the tenders, I'm going, is this good or not? And I just got to believe in myself, I suppose.
Yeah. It sounds like you're sort of answering the objections from the start, through that research and being really thorough about it. Probably a bit like when the first question you answered on this podcast, I could have needed to ask you 6 questions to get that amount of information, but your thoroughness in the way you answered it speaks volumes about how you approach things. So let's go back and have a quick Well, I want to have a conversation with 2 of your previous selves. So the first one is your 12-year-old self that started working was it your parents' Chinese restaurant, did you say?
Yeah, Chinese takeaway, yeah.
So if we went back and spoke to that version of you and asked him what he thought about what you're doing today, what would he say?
That's so powerful. That's so good. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, and that's probably where I need to do a bit more coaching. Yeah, and to be fair, I've done some self-reflection, and even when I go back to let's do the 12-year-old first. I think he would be proud of where I am. From being an Asian background, they always want you to become a doctor or a sort of medical profession. I have 2 siblings. I'm the middle child, and both my siblings are not really academic, and I did have to fight really hard to sit down and read. And literally, we shared a room and both the takeaway as well. So it's really hard when they're playing games or fighting. I'll be there trying to work hard. My mum recognized this and she put a lock on the door and gave me a room to myself. So yeah, being in this medical professional, helping people, making people change their lives, I think he would be super inspirational. And something that was really, really nice recently, I went to a 40th birthday and his sister, who's slightly older, has a son and said that you're his role model.
Oh,
And I was like, wow, that's so nice. And he's Chinese BBC as well. So we call him British born Chinese. And
BBC.
so so that's lovely to have that feedback. And it's, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I think the 12-year-old would think.
amazing. Gosh, I want them to make a film about Adam Sue. I can picture it. And so the other version of you I want to talk to you is the young physio student on that placement.
Wow, yes. Me and my friend, we reflect on that so many times, and we still do. And and yeah, it probably still sort of shapes and pushes me and drags me or drives me, probably drags me in terms of like proving myself to my clients, proving myself to my professional peers that I'm doing okay.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I reflect back to that guy, like, look, I've built this, I've gone through all these experiences, and yeah, you're going to be okay. But you have to go through that pain to be able to be where you are now. And I think that's what I
yeah.
would say to that guy.
Yeah, and I hope and I'm sure that version of you would be hugely reassured by hearing this story now. And doesn't that tie in so well with the people you're working with? I mean, I don't know if you do get them to reflect back when they've got to the end of the program or when they're at that point where they have that capacity and that belief that they can work. But to me, it ties in so well with the path that you're taking your clients through now from that place of feeling, can I do this? Society or circumstances have dealt me some blows that have really affected my confidence. But look where I am now. There just seem to be
Mm,
so many helpful parallels, and having this conversation with you today, it just illustrates to me so clearly why you have done so brilliantly in this area. And you say you're keeping in your lane. Gosh, absolutely does sound like it is your lane, Adam.
thank you. And that's the thing is that if I hear peers, trying to venture out, let's say, I don't know, want to do like a food market and stuff, I'm like, do it, do it.
Yeah.
And I always do that. And I have peers now who are, struggling to grow their business or go on ventures, but I'll be the one that always be like behind them and pushing them. And
Mm.
I don't know where that comes from either. But I have a friend, a very old school friend when I was 7 year old, and his brother, we still play football together, and we played on New Year's Eve, and we always get together like 11 asides, dad's teams now, we're really unfit. But he would say, oh, it's Adam Sue, fitter, stronger, faster. And he always just throw these fit face. But I don't know where that's come from. And again, lovely to explore that, where that's come from in terms of that. But on like patients journeys. Like, for example, one recent one through, the coaching and through my company expanding, I was able to give him a life coach, I suppose, or a vocational coach.
Mm.
And he's gone into a different career. Like he's gone into sports retail. And
Okay.
that's something he found interesting. We explored printing t-shirts and going self-employed because you don't have to be stuck in that isolated place. And the people that are the people I'm working with just feel like I'm clean. That's all I am. I know you've got
Mm.
so much more skills, you've got so much other things, life experience, and what else would you like to explore? And it's about helping with those individuals because there's so much resources out there and there's so much more opportunities out there now.
Yeah, I love that, Adam. I love the way you're working. Obviously, with my experience of coaching, it feeds very much into the way that I really like working with clients. But it's so great to hear how you're applying it in this area that's so needed. There's a couple of problems with your sound in that last section, and your video was freezing. Oh no, you're back with me now. It's fine. We didn't lose you at all, and I hope people listening got the gist of what you were saying. I certainly did, which is why I didn't stop it. But you're back with us now, so that's great. Um, Adam, is there any final word you would like to give to people? I feel like you've just given a really strong message. Like if there's something you want to go for, then go for it. Is there anything you'd like to add just at the end of this episode?
So I think the last thing is there's so much information out there now with social media. There's other physios bashing other physios and therapists bashing other therapists. And I feel like through your own clinical experience, through your own patient interactions, take some value out of that. If you're getting patient outcomes through manual therapy, if you're getting patient outcomes through giving strength and conditioning and believing themselves that way, do it. But have an open mind and continue practicing the way you are. And don't feel like it's a black and white situation. There's so much nuance. Life is nuance, and that's what I love about life, is that we do, even through adversity. And that is very important. And I feel like I'm still working on that. And so if you still have that, like I did, that niggle, that itch to start your own thing, then just start off slowly, step by step, and seek help and understand your niche and your passion and go from there.
Brilliant. There were a couple of glitches there, so I'm just going to summarize for people in case they lost it. But basically, Adam was saying take feedback from your own situation with clients, see what's happening on the ground, take confidence from that, build on that, give yourself, use your own feedback as much as other people's. And then finally, what Adam was saying there, if you hit on something you want to do, then go for it. Amazing. Thank you, Adam. I think the internet is probably telling us we should draw the this episode to a close, but I'm so grateful for this conversation. And I am really looking forward to seeing where things go for you. And I would love to have some of these additional conversations that we've hit upon today to explore some of those things more deeply. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for everybody listening.
So what an interesting discussion with an interesting young physio trying to do something very innovative. It feels like Adam's broken through in a really heartfelt way some of the bureaucracy and the practical challenges of putting on programs like his Work and Pain Solutions program. And what came across really strongly for me was this idea of social belonging that Adam talks about so much, both in the context of his own life and how social belonging has been a challenge, and how that manifests with the people that he is supporting to get back to work. How being out of work really affects your sense of social belonging, how social belonging may have been the thing that actually contributed to the situation that they find themselves in before they get support from Adam. That isn't a phrase that I've heard a lot before, but it sounds like it's really important in this area of occupational health, functional restoration. So let me know anything that you took away from that episode, anything you enjoyed, anything that you found interesting. I apologize. I normally ask at the end of the episode how people can get hold of my my guests, and I didn't do that. So I'm going to put Adam's contact details in the show notes. So if you are a therapist, a clinician, a parent, a friend, a colleague, a son, a daughter who is giving to people in all aspects of your life, all day, every day, then do remember that you're okay. Like Adam was saying, you're okay. You're doing okay. You are okay. And I'm sure that's the message that you're delivering to lots of the people who depend on you for support. So reflect it back on yourself. You are okay and you do matter.
Do you know your tendinitis from your spondylitis? Below par with PMR? No doubt about gout? The Rheumatology Physio website is teeming with content to engage with. Downloads, books, courses and more to address any gaps in your knowledge. Head to rheumatology.physio, your one-stop shop for rheumatology information.